The luxurious penthouse gleamed under the soft glow of ambient lighting, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Chicago's dazzling skyline. Inside, however, the atmosphere was anything but serene. James Cole stood by the grand piano, his posture rigid, fists clenched at his sides. Across the room, his parents, Sarah and Joan Cole, sat with expressions as cold and unyielding as the marble floor beneath them. "James," Sarah began sharply, "this isn't up for debate. The wedding is in a month, and you will marry Charlotte Whitmore." James scoffed, pacing like a caged animal. "Charlotte Whitmore? Are you serious? I barely know her, she's practically a stranger." "She's a Whitmore," John interjected, his deep voice rumbling like thunder. "That's all you need to know. The Whitmore partnership will secure the future of Cole Industries. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement." "Beneficial for you, maybe," James snapped, turning to face them. "But not for me. I won't marry someone I don't love. This is my life, not some corporate murder." Sarah's lips tightened into a thin line. "Your life is a privilege, James, one we've worked tirelessly to provide. The least you can do is honor your responsibilities." "My responsibilities?" James echoed, voice rising. "What about my happiness? Or does that not matter, as long as the company thrives?" Sarah's gaze turned icy. "You're being dramatic. Love isn't the priority here, stability is. Charlotte is a smart, capable woman from a reputable family. She's perfect for you." "She's perfect for you," James countered, frustration boiling over. "This isn't about me at all." John rose, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the room. "Enough, James. Either you follow through with this marriage or you can consider yourself cut off from the family, the company, everything." James' heart pounded in his chest. "You'd really do that? Disown me for not playing along with your plan?" Sarah stood too, her gaze unwavering. "We won't have to, because you'll do the right thing." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating like a lead blanket. James turned away, staring out the massive windows at the glittering city below. "This conversation is over," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Get out." Sarah and Joan exchanged a glance, then gathered their things and left without another word. The sound of the door closing echoed through the penthouse, leaving James alone with his thoughts. Later that evening, James found himself wandering the streets of Chicago, his mind racing. The cool night air bit at his skin as he walked aimlessly, searching for a way out. He couldn't let his parents control him, but their threats were real. Losing everything he'd built wasn't an option. As he turned a corner, his steps faltered. A young woman sat on the sidewalk, leaning against a building. Her backpack, worn and frayed, rested beside her. She was huddled in an oversized jacket that did little to shield her from the cold. As he approached, she lifted her head, revealing striking green eyes framed by messy brown hair. Her gaze was wary, but there was a quiet strength behind it that caught James off guard. "Spare any change?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. James stopped, studying her. "What's your name?" She hesitated, unaccustomed to strangers asking anything beyond what she needed. "Emma," she said at last. James' mind raced, a wild idea forming. "Emma," he repeated, crutching slightly to meet her gaze. "What if I told you I could change your life?" Her brow furrowed. "I'd say you've been watching too many movies." James let out a short laugh. "Fair. But I'm serious. What if I told you I could get you off the streets, give you a place to live, food, clothes, everything you need to start fresh?" She narrowed her eyes, suspicion creeping in. "What's the catch?" James stood, shoving his hands into his coat pockets. "You marry me. For a year." Emma stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "What?" "I'm not crazy," James said quickly. "I just need a wife. It's complicated. But it's just a business arrangement. You'll have everything you need, and after a year, we'll part ways, no strings attached." Emma shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "This is some kind of joke, right? Marry you, a total stranger?" "I'm serious," James said firmly. "I'll draw up a contract. You'll be protected. And I'll pay you enough to get back on your feet for good." She studied him, her gored expression softening slightly. "Why me?" James hesitated. The answer was clear but too vulnerable to voice. "Because you don't know me. You don't care about my money or status. You're real. Leela looked down at her hands, thoughts swirling. The offer was outrageous, but so was her reality. She had nothing to lose, and maybe everything to gain. Okay, she said finally, meeting his gaze. But if you're lying, I'm out. I'm not, James promised. As they shook hands to seal the agreement, neither of them realized how much that moment would change their lives. Emma sat in the warm glow of James' penthouse, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of her coffee cup. She looked out the massive windows at the glittering Chicago skyline, a stark contrast to the street she had called home for the past year. The plush surroundings felt surreal, like a dream she didn't belong in. James sat across from her, watching carefully. His tailored shirt and polished demeanor were so far removed from her world that she could barely believe they were having this conversation. So, she began cautiously, you want me to marry you, just to get out of another marriage? James leaned back in his chair, his expression calm but resolute. That's the gist of it. Emma let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. You don't even know me. That's the point, James replied. You're not like the people I usually deal with. You're honest. Real. Emma's gaze sharpened. You don't know that. I could be lying to you right now. Then why aren't you? James countered, his eyes steady. Emma looked away, her chest tightening. His confidence unnerved her, but the offer was tempting. Too tempting. A year ago, Emma's life had been completely different. She lived in a modest but cozy home with her father, her days filled with music and dreams of performing on grand stages. Her father, fiercely independent and full of love, had taught her to play piano and guitar, encouraging her talent every step of the way. But everything changed when he fell ill. Medical bills mounted quickly, draining their savings. The home she had grown up in was sold to cover the costs. And when he passed, she was left with nothing but a few personal items and her battered guitar. Pride had kept her from asking for help. She tried to make it on her own, playing on street corners and in small coffee shops, but it was never enough to cover rent. Slowly, she slipped into homelessness, clinging to her music as the last thread tying her to who she used to be. Despite everything, she refused to give up. She survived day by day, fiercely guarding her dignity. Even now, faced with James' outrageous proposal, her instinct was to walk away. I don't know, she said finally, breaking the silence. It sounds insane. James leaned forward, his voice softening. I get it, but this isn't a scam. And it's not about love. It's just a business arrangement. You'll have everything you need, food, clothes, a place to stay. I'll help you start over. In a year, we part ways. Emma studied him, her instincts at war with her desperation. What's in it for you? My parents, James said, frustration creeping into his tone. They're forcing me into an arranged marriage to merge two companies. If I'm already married, their plan falls apart. Emma frowned. So I just be your cover story. Essentially, James admitted. But I'll make it worth your while. You'll have complete control over the terms, your privacy, your freedom, everything. Lala's fingers tightened around her cup. The idea of tying herself to a stranger felt dangerous. But so did the alternative, returning to the streets with no clear future. And if I say no, she asked. Then I'll find someone else, James said honestly. But I hope you'll consider it. She hesitated, weighing her options. The risks were enormous, but so was the opportunity. Fine, she said at last, her voice steady. But if this goes sideways, I'm out. James nodded, relief flashing across his face. Fair enough. I'll have my lawyer draft the paperwork tomorrow. As James walked her to the door, Emma paused, glancing over her shoulder. You're taking a big risk, you know. What if I turn out to be a nightmare? James smiled faintly. I guess we're both gambling. Emma gave him a small, uncertain smile before stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. What James didn't know, what no one knew, was that Emma wasn't just a struggling musician. She was Emma Harrison, the estranged daughter of David Harrison, a once powerful business mogul who had fallen from grace in a high-profile scandal years ago. Emma had spent her adult life distancing herself from her family's name, determined to carve her own path. If James ever found out who she really was, everything could come crashing down. As the elevator descended, she whispered to herself. You can handle this. It's just a year. But deep down she knew nothing about this arrangement would be simple. The first morning in James' penthouse felt unreal. Emma stood in the kitchen, staring at the sleek marble countertops and high-end appliances, completely out of place. The fridge was stocked with imported delicacies she couldn't pronounce, and the view from the floor-to-ceiling windows made her dizzy. "Coffee." James' voice startled her as he entered the room, casually dressed in a fitted shirt and jeans. "Oh sure," Emma replied, her eyes still scanning the room as if it might vanish. James poured 2 cups and handed her one, watching as she cautiously took a sip. "You look like you're waiting for the ceiling to collapse," James said. Emma smirked. "It's just a lot. I've never lived anywhere like this." "You'll get used to it," James said, leaning against the counter. "Consider it part of the arrangement." She raised an eyebrow. "Right, the arrangement. Married one day, strangers the next." He chuckled. "It's unconventional, I'll give you that, but you'll be fine. You're tougher than you look." Emma didn't respond, instead taking another sip of coffee and staring out at the skyline. She couldn't help but wonder how long she could keep up this charade. Over the next few weeks, their vastly different lifestyles became increasingly apparent. Emma's independent nature clashed with James' world of wealth and privilege. She insisted on making her own meals instead of relying on the housekeeper, much to James' amusement. "I didn't think it was possible to burn eggs," James teased one morning as she scraped a charred mess off a pan. "Don't start with me, we're perfect," Emma shot back, though her lips twitched with a reluctant smile. Despite the awkward start, they found a surprising rhythm. James was impressed by Emma's quick wit and sharp observations, while Emma began to see glimpses of vulnerability beneath James' confident exterior. One night, she found him in his home office, staring at a photo on his desk. It was a picture of James as a child sitting on his father's lap. "You look happy," she said, leaning against the doorway. James glanced up, startled, before turning the photo face down. "Appearances can be deceiving," he said. Emma stepped closer, her curiosity piqued. "What happened?" James hesitated, then sighed. "My parents have always been controlling. They see me as an extension of the company, not as a person. My entire life has been about meeting their expectations." Emma frowned. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," James admitted. "That's why I had to get out. This whole marriage thing, it's not just about defying them. It's about proving I can make my own choice." Emma nodded slowly, her initial skepticism softening. "I get it more than you know." One evening, unable to sleep, James wandered through the penthouse and heard faint music coming from the living room. He followed the sound and found Emma sitting at the old upright piano tucked into the corner. Her fingers danced over the keys, creating a haunting melody that filled the space. She was so absorbed in the music that she didn't notice him at first. "You're incredible," James said softly when the piece ended. Emma jumped, turning to face him. "I didn't know anyone was listening." "I didn't know you could play," he replied, stepping closer. "Why didn't you tell me?" She shrugged, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It's not something I talk about much. Just a part of my past I'd rather keep private." James studied her, sensing there was more to the story, but he didn't push. "Well, you should play more often. You've got real talent." Emma offered a small smile. Maybe the arrangement faced its first true but at charity gala a few weeks later. James had to introduce Emma as his wife, and she felt completely out of her depth. "You'll be fine," James assured her as they stepped into the opulent ballroom. "Just smile and nod." "Easy for you to say," Emma muttered, smoothing the hem of her borrowed evening gown. As they mingled, Emma surprised herself and James with her ability to navigate the crowd. Her natural charm and quick thinking won over several influential guests, even leaving James' skeptical parents momentarily speechless. "Your wife is quite the charmer," one guest remarked to James. "Yes," James said, his gaze lingering on Emma. "She is." But the evening wasn't without its challenges. Sarah Cole pulled Emma aside, her polished smile thin and cold. "You played your part well tonight," Sarah said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Thank you," Emma replied evenly, refusing to be intimidated. Sarah's smile faded slightly. "But don't think for a second that I'm fooled. I know there's more to you than meets the eye, and I'll find out exactly what you're hiding." Emma's breath hitched, but she kept her composure. "Good luck with that," she said, turning on her heel and walking away. As the night wore on, Emma couldn't shake Sarah's words. She knew the truth about her past would come out eventually, but when it did, what would it cost her? Back at the penthouse, James noticed her quiet mood. "You okay?" Emma forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." But as she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, she knew this arrangement was growing far more complicated than she'd ever anticipated. The cold precision of Sarah Cull's study was a stark contrast to the warmth of the rest of the Cull mansion. Sarah sat at her desk, her laptop open and a thick dossier spread before her. The face staring back at her from the screen was unmistakably Lala's, though younger and surrounded by headlines that screamed, "Scandal, Harrison and Parr collapses in Fritz scandal." Margaret's lips curled into a thin smile as she picked up the phone, dialing James. James was in his office, reviewing a new project proposal, when his phone buzzed. Seeing his mother's name, he hesitated before answering. "What is it, Mother?" Sarah's tone was clipped. "We need to talk. It's about your wife." James sighed, leaning back in his chair. "What about her?" "She's not who she claims to be," Sarah said. "Come to the house now." The tension in the Cull mansion was palpable as James entered the study. Sarah stood by the desk, the dossier open and ready. "What's this about?" James asked, his patience thinning. Sarah gestured to the documents. "Your wife, Lala, is Emma Hanover. Ring any bells?" James frowned, stepping closer to scan the pages. His eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. "Hanover, as in David Harrison?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "The disgraced mogul who lost everything in one of the biggest corporate frauds of the decade. That's her father." James shook his head, trying to process. "Why didn't she tell me?" "Because she's been hiding it," Sarah said sharply. "Think about it, James. She's using you. This is her way of clawing her family's reputation back from the ashes." James clenched his jaw, his mind spinning. "You don't know that." Sarah stepped closer, her voice low and biting. "Don't be naive. You've been played. She's not some innocent street musician you rescued. She's a Harrison. This was her plan all along." James returned to the penthouse, his thoughts a storm of doubt and anger. Emma was in the living room, sketching something on a notepad. She looked up as he entered, her smile fading at the intensity of his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting the notepad aside. James crossed his arms, his tone colder than she'd ever heard. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" Emma froze, her breath catching. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb, Lala," James snapped. "I know you're Emma Harrison, daughter of David Harrison, the man who nearly destroyed countless lives." Lala's face paled, but she stood her ground. "So what? You went digging into my past." "I didn't," James said sharply. "My mother did, and she thinks you're using me to restore your family's reputation." "Is she right?" Emma's hands balled into fists. "You think I wanted this? You think I chose to be his daughter? I've spent my whole life running from that name. Then why didn't you tell me?" James demanded. "Why keep it a secret?" "Because it's not who I am." Emma shouted, her voice cracking. "I've spent years trying to escape the shadow of my father's mistakes. The name Harrison ruined my life, James. I lost everything, my home, my family, my dreams. All I've ever wanted was to be Emma. Just Emma." James' eyes narrowed, his anger battling with the flicker of understanding her words ignited. So none of this was real. It was all just convenient. Emma stared at him, her chest heaving. "You don't get it, do you? I never asked for this arrangement. You came to me. You needed me. And somewhere along the way, I thought maybe, just maybe, you saw me for more than my past. But I was wrong." James looked away, the weight of her words pressing on him. Emma grabbed at her backpack, her voice trembling. "You know what? Maybe your mother's right. Maybe I don't belong here. But at least I know who I am. Can you say the same?" She walked past him, her steps quick and determined. "Emma," James called, his voice softer now. She paused at the door but didn't turn around. "Goodbye, James." And then she was gone. The penthouse felt impossibly quiet after she left. James sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. The truth had shaken him, but the way he had handled it made his chest etch with regret. He stared at the photo of them from the charity gala, her radiant smile, so genuine it made his earlier accusations feel hollow. James buried his head in his hands, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. James sat alone in the penthouse, staring at the grand piano in the corner of the room. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional hum of the city outside. His mind replayed the confrontation with Lila, her raw, anguished words echoing in his ears. "At least I know who I am, can you say the same?" He had been so quick to judge, blended by his mother's manipulation and his own insecurities. Emma wasn't using him. She had been surviving, fighting to reclaim her life despite the shadow her father's name had cast over her. James closed his eyes, the image of Emma sitting at the piano, her fingers dancing over the keys, flashing through his mind. She wasn't defined by the Harrison name or the scandal. She was her own person, brilliant, resilient, and honest, and he had let her slip away. Meanwhile, Emma's world had shifted. After leaving James, she returned to what she knew best, her music. She started playing at small venues, her confidence growing with each performance. At a cozy jazz bar downtown, Emma sat on a stool with her guitar in hand. The audience was small but attentive, captivated by the soul in her voice and the passion in her melodies. When she finished her set, the applause was genuine and warm, a balm to the wounds James' accusations had left behind. For the first time in years, Emma felt like she was reclaiming her identity, not as a Harrison, but as an artist. "Your voice is amazing," a man said as she packed up her guitar. "Have you thought about recording?" Emma smiled politely but shook her head. "One step at a time." Back at the penthouse, James couldn't shake the emptiness Emma's absence had left. Desperate to make amends, he turned to Olivia, his trusted assistant. "She's amazing, Olivia," James said, pacing the room. "And I blew it. I need to fix this." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "You're not exactly subtle about it, James. So what's your plan?" "I don't know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair, "but I can't let her go. Not like this." Olivia thought for a moment, then smiled. "If music is her world, maybe you should speak her language." Inspired, James threw himself into a plan. He reached out to venue owners and industry professionals, pulling every string he had to organize a private concert. But this wasn't just any concert, it was for Lila. He tracked her performances, showing up discreetly at one of her gigs to hear her play. Watching her pour her soul into the music, he felt his heart swell with pride and determination. 2 weeks later, Emma received an unexpected invitation. It was a handwritten note delivered to her apartment. "Emma, you deserve to be seen, to be heard. Please come to the Grand Avenue Theatre tomorrow at noon p.m. Curiosity and skepticism warred within her, but something about the note compelled her to go. When Emma arrived at the theatre, her breath caught. The space was intimate yet elegant, lit by soft golden lights that highlighted a grand piano center stage. The small audience consisted of familiar faces from the music industry, people she had admired from afar but never dreamed of meeting. As she stepped inside, a man approached her with a warm smile. "Emma Harrison?" he asked. Emma tensed at the name but nodded. "I've been hearing about your music. I'm excited to hear you play tonight." "Play?" Emma asked, confused. The man gestured toward the stage. "This is your show." Before she could process his words, James appeared, looking nervous but determined. "James," she said, her tone gored. "What is this?" "It's for you," he said, his voice steady despite the tension between them. "I wanted the world to see what I see every time you play. This is your dream, Lila. Let me help you achieve it." Her heart raced as she took in the room, the weight of James' words sinking in. "I fell in love with you," James continued, stepping closer. "Not your name or your past, just you. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it, if you'll let me." Emma swallowed hard, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "James, you didn't just give me a chance. You gave me my dream." He smiled softly. "Then maybe some things are worth another try." That night, Emma stepped onto the stage, her fingers trembling slightly as they hovered over the piano keys. But as she began to play, all her doubts melted away. The audience was captivated, and when she finished her final song, the applause was thunderous. James stood at the back of the room, his chest tight with pride and hope. When the theater emptied, Emma found James waiting for her near the stage. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. I did, he replied, because you're worth it. Emma studied him for a long moment, then smiled. Maybe we both are. As they left the theater together, the rift between them finally felt like it was beginning to heal. James and Emma sat across from each other in the penthouse living room. The air between them was no longer charged with anger but filled with quiet understanding. I don't expect everything to be perfect overnight, James said, his voice steady yet vulnerable. But I want us to move forward together, not as strangers in an arrangement, but as partners. Emma studied him, her green eyes searching his face for any sign of deceit. All she saw was sincerity. It won't be easy, she replied. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I know, James said, leaning forward. But I'm willing to work for it every day if that's what it takes. A small smile touched Emma's lips. You're stubborn, you know that. So are you, James countered with a soft chuckle. They both laughed, the tension easing as they began to rebuild what had been broken. Over the next year, James and Emma grew closer, their relationship transforming into something real. Emma continued to perform, her talent earning her recognition in the music industry. James, ever her biggest supporter, stood by her side, attending every performance with pride. At the same time, Emma encouraged James to take control of his life, helping him navigate his strained relationship with his parents. Joan remained distant, but Sarah's demeanor began to thaw, and she saw Emma's genuine love for her son. She's stronger than I gave her credit for, Sarah admitted to James one evening. And so are you, James nodded, his heart lightened by his mother's acceptance. 1 year to the day after their whirlwind marriage, James planned a surprise for Emma. She had just finished a sold-out performance at a grand concert hall. The applause still echoed in her ears as she stepped backstage. Wonderful show, Miss Harrison, a stagehand said, handing her a bouquet of roses. Thank you, Emma replied, smiling as she took the flowers. As she turned the corner, she froze. The stage had been cleared, and James stood in the center holding a small velvet box. The remaining crew and a few close friends, including Rachel and Olivia, stood in the wings watching quietly. James, Emma said, her voice trembling slightly. He smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. A year ago, we started something that was supposed to be temporary, a deal. But somewhere along the way, you became my everything. You made me see the world differently. You made me better. Lala's heart pounded as he dropped to one knee, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Emma Harrison, James said, his voice steady, will you marry me again, this time forever? Tears filled Emma's eyes as she stepped closer. Yes, she said with a laugh, whipping her cheeks. But no more contracts. The audience in the wings erupted into cheers as James slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss. Their wedding was a simple yet elegant affair, held in a garden under the stars. Guests from all walks of life, James' business associates, Emma's music community, and even a few former rivals, came together to celebrate their union. Sarah, dressed in a tasteful lavender gown, approached Emma as the reception began. I owe you an apology, Sarah said, her tone genuine. I misjudged you. You've shown strength and grace I didn't think possible. Emma smiled warmly. Thank you, Emma. That means more than you know. The two women shared a brief, understanding nod before Sarah returned to her table. As the night wore on, James and Emma shared their first dance under a canopy of fairy lights. The world seemed to fade away as they moved in perfect harmony, the soft music enveloping them. I can't believe how far we've come, Emma whispered. James smiled, his hand tightening around hers. I can. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. And to think, Emma said with a laugh, it all started with a crazy deal. As the stars twinkled above them, they knew that their journey, filled with challenges, heartbreak, and redemption, had brought them to a love neither of them could have imagined. As James and Emma danced under the stars, their story reminded us that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, even from a marriage of convenience. Their journey shows that trust, forgiveness, and resilience can transform any challenge into something extraordinary. If the story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who loves stories of love and redemption. For more heartwarming tales like this, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story.